Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of the procedure series for MCreator. So today what we're going to be looking at is the NeoForge / Forge energy blocks and basically how to use them and all that. So this one's going to be a really advanced tutorial, and I've kind of saved that for towards the end of the series for at least now, because there's a lot of more complicated things. Now, assuming that you've watched some of the previous early ones, you should already know how to offset coordinates, you should know about the direction, and you should also know about math blocks and if statements and all that stuff. So if you don't, definitely go back and watch those videos, and I will say pick up from here from that point. Because then you'll have an understanding of how the mechanics and stuff work for that. All right, so with Forge Energy, we have the extract, send, and then we can check for the current energy of the block as well as the capacity of the block. We can try sending amount and get the return value of how much was able to be sent without actually sending it. And we also have these two blocks here, which will basically test if that block side can receive or extract energy. So we have this for all of our extract and send values. You can find all these blocks under the block procedures, energy and fluid, and it's all these blocks right up to this one right here. Well, no, this one right here. So the test sending one. Now, the fluid ones we'll cover next week, so definitely tune in for that. But right now, we're just going to be focusing on energy because it's going to be probably a little bit of a longer video for explaining all that. I'll cover the core basics of sending and receiving, and basically how you can get an idea of how the system would work if you wanted to check to a specific side. You would use MBT for that. We'll get into that a little bit after we do the test. For energy storage, or at least energy generators, you don't need to store the energy for the generator itself. You can do that, but it's not required. So all you technically need to do is to know how to send the energy to the block that is connected to it. So in the case of a solar panel, you'll probably have like a connection underneath the block, and that's where you need a local variable, a number variable specifically, and you're going to try to test sending amount to that particular block. Now, the send amount will be varied based on your actual capacity of your energy storage. So if we go to the energy and fluid, you need this particular one enabled. You also need tile entity enabled, and you need a tick rate set to 1. So those things are required to get the Forge energy and fluid system working. Now with the energy and max receive and max send, these particular ones right here are going to tell the game how much it can actually send and receive. So this directly affects these two blocks here. And if you're trying to send too much, then it will cap it at what is allowed for that particular block. So just keep that in mind when you're actually testing it. Even if you are testing to see how much can be going into that block, it's still going to cap it at a certain amount. Even if you try directly sending amount that is higher than that value, it's still going to cap it. So just keep that in mind when you're working with the system, because this will really depend on how much you're able to send per blocks and stuff like that. Now, if we want to test for how much we can send, we need to offset the location for our block. So assuming that this is a solar panel and the block below is probably a cable, we would want to offset the Y position in our test, and we'll do this Y-1 to get the block below. Any direction is usually fine when you're dealing with the block that you're currently running the script from. When you're running it testing from another block below or something that is connected to the side of it, then what you want to do is actually test for the face of that other block. So in this case, we're going downwards, so we want to test if the face up is basically able to receive energy. So we do this by going the position down and using the position for the direction up for the face. So that's all that we need to do for that part. And then if it can send that amount of energy, we want to maybe see if the value is above 0. So we're going to go and use equal to or greater than 1. And we're going to test that value. And then we can send that amount by making sure that the position is also correct. So this should be the same position from your test. And the direction, the face, that should be is the same. And we're using the test value to basically get that position. So, or the amount that we're actually sent. So this will return basically the amount that it's going to try sending to it. We're going to attempt to send 100. If the block has 75 and its capacity is 100, then it only will return 25 because there's 25 space in that particular block. So in this case, this condition will be true because it's equal to or above 1. And then it will send that 25 to the block at that face. So that's all you really need to do for a simple generator that will constantly send energy. Let's look at how we can basically send energy between blocks and also receive. So something like a cable system. So for a cable system, we also have to kind of extract our energy as well. So it's not too much different than what we've basically done here. The only difference is we need to extract the amount that we sent. So in this case, it's going to send the amount. The value of the amount is still going to be inside the block at this point. And then what we do is we remove that amount from the block. And all we need to do is use the same value that we tested for sending. And then we need to just use the any direction for that one because we're dealing with the current block location. So that's all you need to do for actually sending it. You would test for other directions, depending on how many sides and ports your block has. You'll probably be doing this for anywhere from 1, 2, or up to 6 sides. So that will really vary depending on your setup for your connections and stuff. Now, if you're basically extracting energy, maybe it's a device or something like that, you just need to basically extract the amount. So in this case, you would just simply extract the amount for this. So you wouldn't even need these particular blocks too much. You would just test for the capacity of the current block. And say it's 100, so we're extracting 100 out of this. If it's equal to or greater than 100, then we're going to extract 100 from the same block location. And that's all you need to do to consume energy. So it's very simple and straightforward for that part. There's energy capacity, so if you wanted to send a very specific amount over, you can basically do that by testing the capacity, getting the capacity, and then checking to see how much is remaining from the current amount. That's not ideal when you have the test amount though, so you don't really need to do that, but you can. The last thing that we're going to look at is just one of the systems that you can actually go ahead and determine what sides of a block are going to receive and not receive energy. So because these blocks don't really do anything in MCreator, they're more designed for connecting to other mods that are hard-coded and stuff like that. We can create our own system using MBT. So let's take a look at how I did this. So I have a very simple procedure block here, which will reserve the names for receive north, receive east, receive south, receive west, and receive up, as well as receive down. And then I'm using a logic dependency for each side. So I can basically toggle this particular script and just call it and set the values whenever I need it. So if I add a new block, I don't need to add this to the script every time. I just call this procedure, set true or false depending on what sides I want. This is important because something like cables get a little bit more complicated when you want to only send it for a certain direction. So for a block that maybe is south, or I guess north in this case. So if the block north direction of the current block has the value of receive south, then we can send and extract our current amount of energy. So I've set up one variable for each side, and I'm using that for each side here. So basically this will allow me to determine on how much energy I can send and receive based on this particular amount. I'm also making sure that the block currently has 1,200. So when it does distribute the energy of 200, that there's always going to be enough energy to distribute. Otherwise, you're going to get bottlenecked, and the ones at the very end of the script, these procedures will have a less chance of running if the other directions aren't filled up yet. So that's really important to make sure that you have enough energy before you run the script first. Okay, so that's basically all you really need to know about the system. Let's go in game and just give it a quick test first, and then we'll basically wrap things up. All right, so I have a simple vending machine. This will not do anything without power. I have a simple solar panel. This will generate power to the block below if there is a certain side connected. And this is just a simple kind of like cable system that I have set up. So it can receive cable energy from any of these sides and stuff like that. It will work perfectly how you would expect a cable to work, basically. So on its own, if we open up the tile or get the tile data for this particular block, so we go data, get block, and then our position of the block, we can see that the block has a MBT value of energy storage. This is for NeoForge /Forge. And then we can see that energy is equal to 0. So if we put a solar panel on top of this and test again, we can see that it will start filling up with energy. And this will increase until it gets to the maximum energy capacity. Now, if we went and put another block here of our vending machine, it's not going to do anything at the moment until it reaches its capacity. So we can see it's at 30,000 and it reached 40,000 and the energy was deducted, and then it went back down to the remaining amount. So we got 1 diamond from that because of the way that I set it up. Obviously, the blocks will require the correct amount of receive and remove energy. So if we go into the block properties, again, just make sure if you're running into issues where it's not reaching a certain amount or has a certain amount for extracting and stuff like that, it's most likely because these values are probably not correct. So for maximum energy receive, if you're bottlenecking, not sending more than 200, this is probably because then the value is set to 200 or a certain number that you're actually assigned it to. If your energy is not extracting enough, then this is the reason why. You need to make sure that your energy will actually be able to extract the amount when you're using those particular blocks. Lastly, make sure that your capacity is high enough to store all that particular value into. I don't have a specific number for what these values should be, but assuming that the default values are like this, I would say that probably stick to that ratio and work at sending and receiving roughly around 200. These numbers should always be integers as well, not floats. So basically don't use decimal points for these, only use integers because that's more stable when you're working with computer math. All right, that's all there is to it. So if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment down below, rate the video. Next week, we'll be looking at Forge Fluid and finishing up that particular part. And if you want a community to hang out with for projects and other MCreator members, then definitely consider checking out my Discord server. The link is in the description of the video. Other than that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.